my announcement's going to be at least. So there's these papers next to you. There's a URL in the back of them. Scan the barcode if you dare. Please fill out the forms, and if you haven't for the rest of the talks you've been to, please do that for those too. They're really important, the feedback. We actually look at them. I've actually been live plotting and graphing and doing all of them as we got the electronic ones coming in. So we do take that. We actually give the feedback back to the speakers. It's really important, so please do that. And today we're going to learn about painting a company red and blue. Ian, Director of Services at IOActive, and take it away.
Thanks, Bob. All right, let's do this. So, I used to have like a big slide with all my credentials and background and stuff like that, but I'm sure you can Google, so we're just going to skip that and dive straight in, okay? And most of my background that I'm not going to talk about has been in offensive security, and the way it's applied is obviously not for my personal profit, but for the profit of companies that we help defend. In a nutshell, it's red teaming, which is the fun stuff that we do on a daily basis, and then really translating that to something that the organizations we work with can understand and take away in terms of improving their blue teams. And the reason why I picked a talk that talks about red team and blue team is that there are a lot of red team talks, especially recently. And I'm to blame as well. There's a lot of fun in it. It's very sexy. You can talk about all the exploits and how you own companies and destroy things. And it's really neat and fun, but my gut feeling is that at some point we kind of lost touch with why are we doing this and what's the benefit and how to really take that huge impact that a red team can do and apply it back to the company. Hence, painting company red and blue. So I'll start with the basics. What is a red team? And again, I'm sure that a lot of vendors are going to hate me for this, but glorified penetration testing is not red teaming, okay? If you repackaged your very uber fancy, hacker-driven exploit lab and call it red teaming, it's just marketing, which is fine, again, and it'll help you sell, especially in this climate where everyone is jumping on the latest trends, but that's not the case. Red teaming has traditionally been a full adversarial simulation, and adversaries are not pen testers, okay? Adversaries use whatever they have in their capability, in their scope, and their scope is reality, okay? It's not your list of IP addresses and servers, and that reality consists of, again, I'm trying to oversimplify it, three main elements. Electronic, which is the traditional pen testing that everyone is repackaging right now. Social, which we've been bitching about for ages, you know, the users. I could have the best, most secure, perfect network until the first user starts using it, right? And social goes in many, many places. It can be on the phone, it can be electronic, it can be in person, social engineering, and physical. Okay? Again, I can have the most secure network until someone plugs into my network or PC or takes away a PC and owns it. And red teaming is really the overlapping areas in that Venn diagram. It can be here, just in electronic and social. It can be here in electronic and physical. But it gets really interesting when everything converges together and forms an attack vector that, again, simulates reality. Because an attacker is not going to limit themselves to one element just because your IT department reports to the CIO, who's only responsible for the electronic elements, and the physical is under the COO or whatever it is. They don't care about that. And really, the bottom line is, this is like getting into a fight, all right? And getting a few punches and being certain that you can survive it, all right? Rather than get mugged and shot. So that when you really get mugged and hopefully not shot, you'll know what to do and how it feels to get into a fight. So it's a very, very peculiar situation, and that's what we're trying to mimic here. All right, so that's the basic premise of red team. Next question that I usually get is why? Well, there are a lot of reasons why. Compliance isn't one of them. I love compliance. I think that Justine said that on the first day. Compliance drives a lot of the funding that we as a consulting company get from our clients that need to do something in the know of compliance. But compliance is not bulletproof. It actually attracts a lot of attack vectors that rely on someone being compliant. Because if you are only compliant, I know exactly what's your prescription for getting compliant. So it's very, very easy for me to attack you. And another reason why to perform red team testing is that your adversary is not hackers. It is not pen testers. Okay? Pen testers play by the rules. Pen testers have a script. They have a scope. They have a list of IP addresses. They have rules of engagement that tell them you can't do this, you can't do that, test only within those hours, don't DDoS us, don't do full exploitation. That is not the kind of adversary that you're facing. Again, the adversary that you're facing, whether it's a competitor or anonymous or a state-sponsored actor, they don't care about that. So how are you going to prepare yourself to dealing with those kind of threats other than running a full adversarial simulation? And red teaming is really a progression in kind of the spectrum of the kinds of testing that we've been applying. We usually start from a vulnerability scan to kind of get a baseline of what's out there. What am I obviously vulnerable to? I need to enumerate my basic vulnerabilities so I can control them, so I can mitigate them, so I can put some risk rating on them. And then we move on to pen testing, which gets a little more interactive and a little more aggressive from a kind of turning up the volume perspective, until we get to the real red team testing, which is, crank the volume up to 11 and get as real as you can in a controlled fashion. Again, I'm not going to be all crazy, let's go, shoot some people in a controlled fashion. And it's a very fine line in terms of how do I turn up the volume without actually causing major impact on the company, but giving them the experience that they need to really learn from it. Because if they're not, if they're not going to get burnt by touching the pot on the stove, they're not going to learn that it's freaking hot. It's steaming and there's fire underneath it, just like kids. Don't touch it the next time. Until they touch that controllably without everything spilling on them, they're not going to learn. So yes, compliance again is a big friend. It doesn't really apply to security, and that's what I need you to take away from life in general. It's great for lawyers. It really sucks for security, especially when you look at security from a holistic perspective of how do I secure my business, my organization, not my IT. Which is the second takeaway. And we haven't even started talking about red and blue. And our roles, most of the time, are limited to IT security, which is great because that's where we grew up from. But when we think about how do we fit into whoever is paying my salary, we're doing a we're doing a disservice, because we're limiting ourselves again to a very, very narrow aspect of what it means to be secure for a company. We've seen the three main elements and we're just focusing on one. So that's my 5-minute why even start with red teaming to begin with, because of all of these. Which brings us to how do I actually start red teaming? Okay, what do I look for in a team that's supposed to do all of that, to ignore compliance, to be the bad guys in a controlled fashion to an extent, to give me a good experience of how would it feel like to be attacked, looked upon, scrutinized, infiltrated, exfiltrated, without actually losing my data and getting sued for $100 million by banks that want to mitigate their risk. And it's really key in looking for that team to first of all look for skill sets. Again, this is not pen testing. yes, they will have a really good pen tester on staff because they need to have that circle in the Venn diagram that says electronic applied. But you should also look for other skill sets. And again, this is an overly simplified, thank you for the Keynote software on my Mac that produces this in seconds, but you obviously want to break this down, and under each column of electronic, physical, and social, bring in some more elements that apply to your specific situations. Do you need more hardware stuff? Do you need more physical, CCTV, control systems, radio systems? Does that apply to your situation or not? So do you need skill sets specific in those areas? And how do you test for your team to have those kind of skill sets? So that's the basic. Looking for people, looking for a team that can provide you that kind of coverage of, all right, I've got enough reds across the spectrum to fulfill what I need in terms of simulating my threat communities, simulating what I'm afraid of in a way that's going to be real enough for me to actually learn from it. Second thing, and just as important as skill sets, is the team's ability to first of all understand how a business works, how my business works. Just as an aside, one of my favorite things in this profession is learning how other businesses work. All right? I think it's fascinating. From retail to healthcare to finance to manufacturing to whatever it is, startups and huge companies and governments, every new engagement is a learning experience. And if you don't have that mindset of understanding, all right, so how does your business work? What keeps you up at night? What pays your, seven-figure salary as a CEO of this business? Okay, that makes you successful and your company successful, because I need to now hack this, the business side. In order to do that, the third thing you need from a red team is the ability to do homework, threat modeling. It's not about, all right, I got it, let's go. I've got a pick set, I've got a gun, or I've got a phone plug. I'm going to ruin your company and win it. No, that's not how attackers work. Attackers understand how you operate. They research you. They find the vulnerabilities in processes and people, in technology, and whatever it is, and then they attack. In order to do that systematically as a tester, and in order to get some value out of it as an organization, you need them to work with a threat model that they can provide back and say, all right, this is the threat model. We can discuss it, we can validate it. It is a formal piece of a way of thinking of how my business works and what are my threats. And I can update that as I go along and fix things in my business. Which leads us to the last part. Once the engagement is done and everyone was red teaming happily and everyone is like, woo, we own the company, how do you deliver that message back? So we all learned about vulnerabilities and risks, and that vulnerability is, and again, this is an oversimplification, is basically a combination of the threat capability, how skilled is the attacker, and the controls over an asset that's trying to be protected. If there's not enough controls and there's enough capability on the threat side, there's a vulnerability because someone can break in and do something. But it goes a little beyond that, because we need to talk, again, we're talking about a business, we're talking about an organization that needs to understand or to be communicated with in terms of risk. And the real question that you should be able to answer is, would you really care? Okay? And once you get to the point of telling your customers or telling yourselves, I see the vulnerability here, I see the risk, I don't really care about it. Because it doesn't make sense dollar-wise. I will assume that risk because that's how my business operates. Once you get to that level, you know that you're talking to a team that can really apply a proper red team engagement for you. Cool? By the way, if you have any questions, comments, slow up, speed down, just pop in, okay? I'm not a big Q&A, I mean, I'm a big Q&A person, but just stop me if you don't get something. Yes?
So the slide you just put up is pretty much the fair text.
Yeah. Again, not trying to sell unfair. Find your risk taxonomy that you kind of connect to in terms of working with. Maybe you have one already in your organization. Maybe the red team has got something that works for you as well. Again, I said it's a simplification and an example. I personally love fair, but that's something else. So we're moving on to the actual red team, okay? And we'll get to the blue team in a couple of slides. First rule of red teaming: you're there to kill. Okay, this is not playing around with Apache vulnerabilities and Heartbleed and whatever it is. You are there to apply the maximum or the minimum force required to take that organization down. Okay, I'm a big fan of a technique called Krav Maga. Go for the jugular. Make things happen as quickly as possible with the most effectiveness to get out of the fight. If it means turning back and running, excellent. All right, if it means dealing with the problem, make it short, make it effective, and get out. Same applies for red teaming. You're not there to play. You're not there to tickle them with Nmap scans and Nessus scan. All right, you go for the jugular. First one. All right. So think about what can take down the business and think big. Again, you are right now their worst case scenario. You need to communicate that with them. You need to talk to the right people, to the CEO, to the COO, to the lawyers, to the marketers, anyone other than security people. Security people don't understand how the business runs. All right, talk to the CFO. Love them. So who's involved, how to take down the business, and go straight in. Okay? Again, this is Krav Maga. This is dealing with real situations. And this is karate, judo, whatever it is. My Krav Maga instructor says, "Oh, you do martial arts? Good. Do you take dance classes before or after that?" Sort of. Second rule: give it everything you've got. Okay. Again, this is not about slowly turning up the volume. This is one hit. We're not talking about coverage, by the way. If you need coverage to see how all of your security controls work, get a pen test. Get a vulnerability assessment that will go meticulously through each and every one of your elements, physical, social, electronic, and get a good picture of them. This is not the case. We're talking about most effective, what's going to bring down your business. You know you're going to lose some of that coverage, but you know that you're going to get way in a way that no pen test will ever do that. One of my favorite quotes goes in a response to how do you run a 100-meter sprint. You start as fast as you can and then slowly speed up. Okay? Again, we're not talking. This is not playing games. This is not running tools and scanning a whole block of networks. So let's start talking about really what it's like to paint a company red and blue. And when I'm talking, and this is, again, the slides might be a little confusing because I literally, from here on, I changed everything last night after thinking about how to deliver this notion of how a red team works with me as an organization, as a blue team. What can I get out of it? And I really changed everything. So excuse my messiness. This is just the beginning. And I'll do that by giving a few examples from different engagements that we've ran in the past year or so. And in each example, I'll try to focus on a different element and show you how, what was the red team thinking and what it was trying to accomplish, and how did the blue team react, or what did it get from it in terms of actually applying something back to the business that mattered. And I'm not talking about patching servers or changing firewall rules. I'm talking about actual impact. So first example, we're in an engagement. We haven't really started hammering on things, but we decided, in scope, out of scope, don't care, to create basically hijacking profiles for executives. And we got to a point where the final report ended up with the CEO's private details. like where he lived, who he's married to, social security numbers, kids, where did they go to school, almost up to a point where we can draw patterns around his travel and who he's communicating with, everything. Scared the shit out of them, which is perfect because that really drove the point of that was our intelligence gathering. And again, the red team itself included a lot of other elements, but just focusing on that, how do you appear from the outside to an attacker? What goes through an attacker's mind when they're looking at you as a company that recently acquired another company, and it's really sensitive, the way that CEOs communicate in terms of M&As and predicting what's going to happen, okay, and monitoring their travel patterns and communication patterns to identify, oh, they're looking at that company because that's, you know, that's in Louisville or that's in Atlanta or whatever it is, and that's their business. Critically important. Same goes for understanding other social aspects of employees working for that company. If I can map out, based on, again, open sources, a huge discrepancy or a huge spread in terms of salaries for, this was for developers, I think. We're talking almost double. Okay, from $46,000 a year to $92,000 a year. There's a breakdown. There's the sample size here is fairly decent, 76 employees, and it's all recent examples. So I know that there's a huge spread on the same skill set, on the same job title in that company. That can mean a lot of things. That can mean that maybe they're getting rid of older and more experienced developers in favor of getting new interns or fresh out of college kids that they can pay less for the same job, which that was the case there. You correlate that with a lot of LinkedIn and other social networks, and you understand that this is the culture. This is a weak point right now. If I can impersonate a college kid, I can easily get a job there. If I can pressure someone who's been working there for 5, 6, 10 years at this job title, I know that this is the culture and that they're under the microscope and they may be booted out any second now. I can leverage that in so many ways. And again, this is just a part of the red team's work at the very, very first stages of intel gathering and recon. So from a red team perspective, again, I'm simulating real intel gathering. What I do, this is how attackers profile and look at an organization. I'm looking at key personnel profiling from the CEO to that experienced developer who's under the chopping block right now because he's making a lot of money compared to his peers. He's been working there for 5, 6 years. He can be pressured to do something and identify general social weak points. All right, I see the culture. There's a change. All right, they're firing a lot of people. Turnaround is very quick. Hiring a lot of junior staff just to get the job done. From a blue team perspective, I'm getting huge gains here. All right, I'm seeing exactly how much public information is out there on me. I may have been monitoring it. I may have not. In this case, they haven't been looking at that. So that brings them another element of this is how I should look at myself and identify vulnerabilities that I may have. It gives them an opportunity to work with HR on social issues that they have culturally in the company. So this is the situation. We're not going to argue about it. All right, this is how it looks like. This is how it feels from the inside. How do we deal with that? Because we're opening ourselves here to a huge attack vector from a social perspective. Right? If I'm getting emails to my employees, enticing them to work somewhere else, or I know your job is in danger. This is a way to compensate for it. And again, and to train key personnel from CEO to developers on how to deal with those kind of approaches. Okay? We're starting to get a picture in terms of red, blue. It's not all about hammer, 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 bam, I owned you. It's about how can I take that and do something useful with it. Which, again, that was my wake-up call for stop giving red team talks. Another example. This is from another engagement. This was really fascinating because in this case, we're working with a big client, really tight on IT. I mean, they had everything locked down, latest and greatest. Every configuration was spot on. We're talking about wireless access points here. beautiful. Impossible to just, we were sitting there for a couple of days, nothing. Everything's encrypted, they're using the right keys, the right protocols, the right algorithms. Hopeless. So we shifted towards a supply chain attack. What would happen if I walk into your conference room as a visitor and manage to grab one of those Arubas from the ceiling and walk out with it? What if I manage to pick up the box that you ship to another office with a pre-configured wireless access point like that? And this is exactly what we did here. Okay? Merging in another element in terms of this is not all about Wi-Fi attacks. This is not about electronic. This is about supply chain. There's a process. There's physical access. How well are those secrets protected on that box? Well, apparently they weren't. And by using the actual interface, we managed to generate a support file. The support file contains some interesting files within it, like the actual certificates and the username and password combinations to access those access points and to connect them back. At the end of the day, in this case, we managed to create an OpenVPN tunnel back to the organization from the outside, bypassing a lot of controls because this is internal networks. Okay? And they're remotely managed. Again, everything was protected, but not enough. Without this, without access to these files, I could have never guessed what was the OpenVPN credentials to get into that management network. And we're talking out of band here. Okay, this is not even within the controls or within the monitoring capabilities or focus for that organization at the time. Okay, so there's a huge takeaway here. First of all, from a red team perspective, supply chain. Okay, again, it's not about your IT. Configuration was spot on. I mean, I could learn from that. I did learn from that. Okay, I'm not a huge wireless person. I was like, wow, this is awesome. We should copy that and resell it to our clients. Piercing the perimeter. The notion of perimeter hopefully has been gone in the past decade. People still rely on it in some places, all right? Especially when it gets a little physical. That's it. This is my wireless. That's where it ends. Well, no, that's not your perimeter anymore. I just went through that and got straight into your internal assets because I'm on your LAN now. We're not talking about DMZ, VPNs, public servers. I am in, and I just bypassed like a dozen controls of your perfectly layered security approach. I'm right at the core, having fun. From a blue team perspective, again, IT is solid. Once you get to that spot, to that sweet moment that you're saying, you know what? I think we got it. You talk to the IT guys and they're all like, excuse my language, have a cyber hard-on, and they're like, everything is perfect. The last 5 pen tests, we got nothing. That's where you go beyond technology. That's where you go to where things really happen. And again, this is a perfect situation for a red team to push those boundaries and really show you what an attacker would do. Expand monitoring towards the unknowns. All right, again, out of band. Not a lot of people, again, more and more are getting there in terms of monitoring and auditing their out of band controls. All right, so it's not just your core network, it's how you manage it, and we'll see some more examples of that. And last but not least, role-based access controls. Is that weird that someone from the internet just VPN straight into our wireless access points and got LAN access? Who is that? Based on what? It was very hard for them to kind of reverse engineer and figure out, how do I tell that it's you and not me? All right? And so that brought a lot of old concepts that needed to be reapplied in terms of how they think about role-based access controls. Cool? Next one. Anyone recognize this? That was a fun one. No? This is a control panel for equipment. Audio, video, stuff like that. Just a little fancier and like 50 times more expensive. Because it's all digital and can be reprogrammed and remotely controlled, and it controls a lot of physical elements in that environment. And it's a system that we've never seen before. Again, we managed to kind of get in to the interesting areas of the organization, and we started looking at those applications that no one's ever seen before. Again, this is highly customized for this kind of environment. This was the first time for me to work in this specific sector of that industry. So I've never seen those systems before, neither any of my red teamers. So we had to learn these on the fly to understand what does it do. I was getting emails left and right. It's like, Ian, what does that do? I've never seen that before. I don't know. Start Googling it and finding what kind of controls they have, and really understanding how things work. Reverse engineering how that organization worked, and we're getting to areas that whoever hired us in that organization have never worked with before inside, because they're focused on IT, on audit, on making sure information doesn't leak or doesn't change. This was just production. This was stuff moving, all right, and taking pictures and audio and video and recording and streaming and broadcasting and whatever it is. They've never touched that before, and it's full of IT. It goes all the way back to actual broadcasting, and again, we got control over those elements that control the studio, for example. For us as a red team, we're like, oh God, this is all new. This is all shiny stuff. And once you realize you can actually move things in the physical world, like move a camera from here to here, like a big-ass camera. These days, there's no more camera people standing behind the things. This is all for show. Everything is controlled robotically, all right? Lighting, audio systems, the booms, everything is automated and scripted and can just run the whole show with no human intervention. So it's learning new assets, controlling the actual environment. One of my pen testers was like, I'm going to have my own reality show right now. that was a revelation. He soon learned that's not going to happen, but we're talking about live here. And really combine those technical elements with the physical ones. If I walk into that area right now and I know that I can cause something to behave differently, I can use that for social engineering. I can be the technician, I can be the guest, I can be whoever I want. If I know what's going to happen in a way that only I know that. I know that camera is going to go all the way back and knock off something. All right? I can use that to my advantage. And having that combined threat vector, again, physical and electronic and social, is priceless. You're in. That's it. You're God. You predicted exactly what's going to happen. From a blue team perspective, again, understanding this is not just your IT. It's not just the desktops and emails and databases. You have tons more technology there that you need to exert your control over and at least monitor. Provide some understanding, guidance in terms of what do you really need there. Okay, how can that affect you from a security standpoint? Recruit stakeholders. That was wonderful because once we were done with this engagement, suddenly security, CISO, had much more work to do, but way more stakeholders in other areas of the business that were much more inclined to work with because they got it. They got it because they were like, you know what? If that would have happened during a live broadcast or during some, if that would have fucked up some recording, that's it. We're done. We're talking about millions of dollars in rating, in advertisement, in whatever it is, and the implication just rolled on, which again was a huge opportunity to get more stakeholders into that understanding of how to secure that business. And again, it goes back to training and educating and working with more people inside, which again, for a blue team, that's critical. Breaking out, getting out of that matrix and facing the real world. More examples. Some of you might recognize this, one of my favorites. Some Dell systems. In that particular case, that was a backup. All right? So in a lot of cases, you're facing assets that are really tightly controlled. And again, it's very hard to get to them, like Exchange servers and databases. These run the business. at some point. Once you understand how the data flows internally, and you realize there are some areas, it's the same data, might be a week older, a day older, whatever it is, an hour older, but if it resides in another location that's less protected, why should I even bother banging on an Exchange server, trying to figure out credentials and stuff like that, when I've got the backup system, the actual Dell box, and I can pop that. I need one credential. All right, and from there we literally dumped terabytes of Exchange data and went through it. And that contains Active Directory, credentials, emails, everything. That was game over. From a red team perspective, very simple. Identify your assets, what you're going for. Remember the first rule? Go for the jugular. That was the jugular. This is the crown jewels. All the company information, but not necessarily where everyone thinks they are. Backup systems, faulty drives that get shipped back. Think about all those situations and understand how can I, as an attacker, use that without going through all those nice layers of security that we've all been learning. And again, and avoid triggering alarms. There's a lot of monitoring there. I need to access a lot of systems before I can get to that Exchange. I'm going to trigger shitloads of FireEyes and antiviruses and Windows control systems, whatever it is. I don't want to deal with that. It's easier just bang on the Dell and take it with me. From a blue team perspective, perfect. Helping me understand that assets are valuable not only in their core operating environment. They are still assets. They do not lose their value when they get backed up. Okay, I need to account for that and look for secondary, tertiary locations, off-site storage of backups. Is it encrypted? Is it not encrypted? How do I deal with that? Again, often kind of overlooked. And correlate alerts for the same asset category. So if something pops up on that Dell box that no one looks at, all right, I need to know that my Exchange lives there as well. And if I have an alert coming off from my usual SOC monitoring of Exchange, I should have that alert from that Dell in a different network correlate with that same asset. So I don't just get an alert on some obscure Dell Backup tape robot. I get an alert saying Exchange, Active Directory, Finance Database. All right? Because again, it's not about the system, it's about the data, it's about the assets that it holds. This is a really quick one. This is, again, it combines supply chain, testing of new equipment. This is a test system that we found inside the organization. This is a Sonic World firewall with an access point, wireless access point. It wasn't deployed in production, but we popped it anyway because it was not part of production. Right? Which meant if it's sitting there and being active, it's going to be production at some point. Okay, so from my perspective, if I pop it or if I add a VPN to it that I can access or another ESSID, I have guaranteed access in a month, 2 months, 10 months, whatever it is. I'm the NSA now. I'm planting backdoors in equipment that's not in production yet. Fantastic. Again, look for all those processes of how do you qualify stuff for production. What do you do from the minute you start talking to the vendor till the minute it's running on your network? What are the processes? You obviously go through testing. Is that in the live environment? Is that in a separate environment? Critical, okay? So for me, backdoors, I'm in. From a blue team, they need to get involved in as early as vendor selection. As early as what do you plan to do? And that was a classic example because that was a Sonic wall. Now think about other equipment. HVAC, for example. I don't know. Heard that in the news some time ago. Everything applies. Everything works. Again, it's getting involved early doing those, red team scenarios in your head, not just sticking to, oh, so you're gonna need a VPN, no problem. Here's a two-factor auth. I'm done. Best practice. Not gonna work. Okay, because I'm gonna pop them. And if you don't have the right controls and understanding of how that should behave, you're not gonna know if I get in there. And look at the process of test to production. Am I going to use the same system that I used for testing and configured it and fine-tuned it and then kind of slowly, gradually move it to production? Or do I have a cutoff point that says it is ready for production? I'm not going to wipe everything, start from scratch, all right? Put in a fresh firmware, run through the configuration, and then put it in production. It's a huge gap. It's a huge difference. You don't know what that test system or what the test period included and how many people touched it, how many accounts are out there. Is there any configurations that I don't care about that because I'm not going to use VPNs, but there is a VPN configured that I can, that's open and I can access. Is there a hidden SSID that someone can just, oh yeah, my backdoor, and just log in? So that's critical from a blue team perspective. I'm going to make this the last one because we don't have a lot of time. Again, thinking about, people are securing their operating systems in Windows 2000s and really doing a fantastic job. And in nowadays, especially with virtualization and high-density servers, we're forgetting about out-of-band. Again, this is, an IBM Blade Center. You can keep on working on your, securing your Windows 2000 machines all you want because I can watch you. I can connect to a virtual KVM and see what you're doing because I have hardware level access because you didn't secure your out-of-band management for that Blade Center. Okay? So again, virtualized, high density, think about what goes on behind the scenes. Don't just focus on the things that are easy for you to understand. Think about the whole scope of the whole realm of how things work, both from the blue team as well as from the red team perspective. Quick notes on blue team work. It's not just about sitting there waiting for things to happen. Okay, you need to be proactive. You need to understand and grasp the full scope of what the business does and how it operates, and make really good judgment. Not knee-jerk reactions like, oh my God, we need to patch this. Oh my God, let's apply, it's called the AV vendor to find a solution. Understand what's going on, take a step back, look at how everything runs in the business, and then act. And again, oh, what the fuck did I do? I think I deleted something. This is a good example for blue team work that we had to deal with as red teamers. They were really awesome. I mean, we crafted, I would fall for that. A really good spear phishing campaign. Domain names were right, logos, everything was just spot on perfect. And they got to it. Less than 10 people. I think 4 or 5 people maybe logged in. One gave some details, and that was it. They were worked so fast, so efficiently inside in identifying what's the problem, okay? First of all, an assessment, what's going on. No knee-jerk reaction. It was quick, but not knee-jerk. They really did a full assessment of what's going on, where is this coming from, what are they looking for, involve the right people. And again, they didn't just limit it to InfoSec. HR, who are they after? Right? Who is in that list of spear phishing? Are they looking for specific departments? Are they looking for specific profiles of people? Reach out proactively to them, minimize the damage, right? Close this down, right? You people are now a risk group. We're going to scrutinize your desktop. We're going to scrutinize your laptops and cell phones and whatever it is because we know that you are targeted right now. Focus your efforts and not just, everyone, there's a phishing campaign, stop censoring emails. No, that's not going to work. Control the environment and apply learning to everything that we've talked about before. Process, people, technology. They work with AV vendors to identify the EPTs that we're sending them. Metasploit. I love it that it's still not detected by AVs. They work with the people, educate, make sure that the high-risk people are aware of what's going on, stop clicking on stuff, all right? And processes. Understand, again, what's going on. Perfect work, really. They got really high marks in responding to this situation. Couple more words on business stuff. And again, this is what pays our bills. This is what gives us salaries and allows us to do more of the fun work. So I'm going to talk business a little bit. Bear with me or just go blah, 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 blah. You need to justify whatever money they're spending on you. Newsflash, all right? This is not just for show. This is not just for you to have fun with your ODAs and red teams and lock-picking skills and social engineer people. It's about buy-in. It's about getting people to understand that investment in red team over time will decrease as you get more value out of your blue team, up to a point where you say, I got this. I got everything nailed down. My red team over time has shown me that I'm minimizing my gaps more and more and more and making sure that I'm actually seeing that I'm more secure. And because I can track that, not just from a patching and kind of vulnerability scanning perspective, I get less and less vulnerabilities. But going back to the risk, I get more and more stuff that I can stuff into the I don't care about that anymore. Okay? Because this is going to cost me peanuts. All right, because this is covered by my processes, by my people, by my technology, because they're at that level, because they went through a few of those street fights or simulated fights, and they know how it feels. They know how to react. It becomes ingrained in their behavior of how this will roll down when it really happens. It's critical to retest and verify. And again, this is not a pen test. You cannot just send the same exploit again, okay, on a system that just got patched. If you found something, if you found a gap as a red teamer, and the blue team understood it and applied, again, the learning process that we talked about before, you cannot do the same thing again, all right? It's not about coming in again with the same song and dance and, hi, I'm the guy from the Girl Scouts, whatever, troop. I think some of our girls forgot their stuff here, or I'm the Verizon guy, I'm here to hook up your network, or I'm the AT&T guy, here you have signal problems. It's not, you cannot use the same script. You need to think, all right, so this is the situation, this is how the gap was closed, let's make sure it's closed. You have to really apply work here. This is about creating a new scenario to test the same root issue. Okay, so it's not about click enter again and be done with it. Bottom line, you deliver success. There is no way that a red team failed. There's just no way. Even if nothing worked, you need to make sure that the other side is taking something out of it. And please don't sell. All right, it's not about selling more. It's not about, it will come by itself, I guarantee. You show up, you give everything you've got, you deliver, again, on that ROI, you deliver on that understanding that now we are way, way better than we were before. They'll come back to get more. Questions? Sorry. Wow. Rough crowd.
All right, I'll start with the question.
Go ahead. Take your time. I need to.
So do you find that if you go in and do, let's say you get asked to do one engagement, you go in, you find one thing, or you show that there is an actual weakness, do you find that that has a wake-up call for the rest of the organization? Like, does the one thing that you found maybe trickle over into, wow, they found that, maybe I should get my stuff cleaned up so they don't find stuff in my area? Is there a good trickle-down effect from that?
Absolutely, absolutely. A lot of those findings, and it's never about one thing. It's usually a combination. That one thing is composed of different elements. Again, when you do a red team, you touch a lot of those. So whether they had buy-in before from those areas or not, there's an immediate attraction. People understand, and to your question, yes, because the impact is very, very vivid. Again, it's not a proof of concept. It's not a couple of lines of code. It's we're going down. So it's very easy to get that buy-in. It's very easy to get change driven inside, even without your observation. So, and again, that's the fun part. You come back after a month, or you get a call and say, you know what, it's my best friend now. You know, it's legal. Of all people, you know, we got some processes lined up. We got, you know, supply chain issues fixed. It's those kind of things that actually make an impact. Yes. Questions?
I have a question. So, when you get to that cyber stalking point where you're following the executive and figuring out where they go, what's the protection that you recommend for them for that aspect? Like, in other words, it crosses the line where after a certain point they feel like they need to give up. Like, I can't do anything about picking up my kids or, you know, having my picture in the newsletter kind of thing. How do you mitigate that?
It's a good question. And the answer really has to take into effect that specific situation. We're talking about high-ranking CEO executives. This is not like a small 200, 300, 400 people company. We're talking thousands of employees. At that point, all right, for this situation, you should have thought about executive protection first, okay, which they didn't have. Second, stop checking in on Foursquare every time you fucking pick up your kid. Right, that's going to be a big problem. And every time you go to Bob's Castle, which is your, you know, Bob's the CEO, and that's your, like, Bob's bed, it's kind of obvious. All right, so it's a combination of corporate procedures of you need some kind of executive protection, yes, okay, and some kind of education. You are, you know, you're playing in the big leagues now, Mr. Bob. You grew from, you know, Bumfuck, Arkansas, but now you're in, you know, you're playing with the big leagues. You're a big target, so you should better shape up and understand that you are a target personally and as a family. You're running billions of dollars in business and money.
Does anybody go out and buy kidnapping insurance after talking to you?
Yes. Yes.
So, to what extent?
To what extent?
I noticed that you mentioned threat modeling.
Yes.
And you know, when I think of it as very software-centric. So when you do threat modeling in your paradigm, you know, how do you approach it? Do you have a methodology, or is it just, you know?
I take a lot. I usually merge two main threat modeling schools of thoughts. One is really the software one that focuses on the technical elements and the kind of the algorithmic process elements. The second one comes completely from the risk side. So take anything, even FAIR. FAIR is a good basis to start threat modeling from, because it abstracts everything. And it's really easy to get to the money. Okay? And that's usually the big driver for me.
Cool, thank you.
We're out of time. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it.
And please fill out the forms. And at the end of the day, we are doing Wait, Don't Call Me. We are giving away prizes if you sign